Welcome, everyone, from various time zones that are joining us today for this important panel at the Zero Project 2022 conference. Our panel is entitled, Let's Talk About Sex. My name is Connie Vandarakis, and I will be your moderator today. I'm a middle-aged white woman with medium curly gray hair, blue glasses, and I'm wearing a white shirt with a bright green, Zero Project green, as we call it, jacket. I serve as an international disability consultant in the arts and culture sector, and I'm a part of the Zero Project Arts and Museum community and Impact Transfer alumni. I'm very interested in seeing the sexual health and wellness for every person on the planet. This panel is for men, women, people that identify queer, trans, and non-binary. This panel is for everyone. I'm honored to introduce our panel and the conversation that will develop. Our panel, Let's Talk About Sex, has its foundation in the United Nations CRPD articles and SDGs that apply directly to the equality of life, sexual health, and reproduction of people with disabilities, as well as the American Disabilities Act in the United States. We have a global panel with us today coming from 5 different countries. They have 5 very different projects regarding sex education, sexual awareness, gender identity, reproductive rights, and sexual harassment issues. We will hear briefly about each of their programs, and then we hope to open it up with a few questions and from myself and from the audience. Please think about your questions that you may have as you listen to the presentations, write them down, or put them in the chat so we can see them. Our first panelist comes from Singapore, Marissa Lee Medjeral-Mills from Disabled People's Association. I would like to turn the microphone over to Marissa, who's joining us in Singapore.
Hi, everyone. As the kind introduction has shared, I'm Marissa. I'm from Disabled People's Association, and I'm here to talk to you about Disordinary Love, a program that we launched a little while back. And can we move to the next slide? Okay, just a little bit about my organization. It is part of Disabled People's International, which is a wider international body of DPOs. And we are the Singapore Member National Assembly. We are an organization that is disability-led. And we're all about giving a voice to persons with disabilities so they can have a say in everything that is about disability in Singapore. Next slide. So our Disordinary Love program is a program all about giving people a safe space to talk about disability, sex, love, relationships with a qualified professional who is a counselor and a trained sexologist, Dr. Martha Tara-Lee. The aim of this program is to give people the confidence to have these conversations. So to make them feel comfortable, to get access to information, and to be able to have these conversations with their loved ones, with their parents, with their family members, with their people they're interested in, and just to feel more confident in general about the subject. The reason we say that is because we hear a lot of negative stuff in the news and the media about people not having access to information that is positive about sex. So sometimes people can get it from sources that aren't the best, and can lead them down a path of either feeling quite frustrated, feeling quite alone, or just doing things that gets them in trouble. So that's what we wanted to do. So the program is based around quarterly workshops that, because of the pandemic, have moved online. And then the workshops are for parents first. Then the following week, the workshops are for individuals with disabilities. And then it's followed by an option to attend one-on-one counseling. And at the same time, we have an Instagram page, a Facebook group, so that people can have multiple points of information and access and engagement. So if you're not comfortable to attend the workshop, you can contact us on our Instagram page or Facebook group. We are also working with the state courts of Singapore to offer counseling services as well for people with disabilities who may have gotten in trouble with the law. And there's either the offense is something sexual, a sexual offense, or maybe it has to do with some behavior that the social workers have identified that Dr. Martha may be able to help with. It is at all stages. It can be after mediation. It can be after, before sentencing, after someone's been found guilty of an offense. Dr. Martha will step in and offer counseling about kind of giving people maybe a different frame of reference when it comes to relationships and how to engage with people that they're interested in a more healthy manner. So that's kind of roughly the program. Next slide. Thanks. So these are some of the links to the program. You can connect with us through our Instagram page. We have recently put all our recordings of our workshops on YouTube so that people can watch it at their own pace. We've cut them up into smaller chapters. We got some feedback during the workshops that there was a lot of information coming at people at one go. So if it's on YouTube, people can slow it down. They can watch it, over a period of time. We've put subtitles, everything that, just to help with people that kind of engaging with it. And there's also a link on this presentation to a news video article about the program and talking to some parents about kind of why they've been interested and how they've been helped by this program. Next slide, please. Here in this slide, we're just sharing some feedback from people that attended the workshop. Just saying that some of them were just saying about how, the sex education is quite lacking in Singapore. I mean, it's not just an Asian taboo. I'm sure it's similar around the world as well. That they were saying that it's great to have access to this kind of very frank information, from someone who actually knows what they're talking about. And some other parents were sharing that, they enjoyed Dr. Martha's session and, how she's opened up their views on how to deal with a tough topic. And the best thing is not to brush away embarrassing topics, but to face and handle the situation more appropriately. Because we found that a lot of parents were uncomfortable they didn't know how to start the conversation with their young adults with disabilities. So Dr. Martha gave kind of starting points, some vocabulary, scenarios, worksheets, everything just to give, prompts and a starting point, I guess. And then also
Marissa,
someone said workshop.
I'm just going to stop you there so that we have equal time for all our other presenters. Sure. But I'm sure you have some very valid feedback from your participants. I'd like to introduce our next panelist. She's a colleague. They're a colleague of mine, Izzy Kaufman, from Disability Pride PA in the United States. Izzy, we'd like you to present.
Hi, thanks for having me. It's really early in the morning in Philadelphia, PA. So I'm a sexuality educator, and I really appreciate you inviting me here today. I'm also disabled. And I think that's an important part of our program is I came to Disability Pride PA wanting to start this initiative, knowing that there is a lot of barriers to teaching people with disabilities about sexuality, more like having the information be accessible, like what she was talking about before. So next slide. Get into it. So Disability Pride PA is a disability-led organization. We started in Philadelphia, Vicki Landers is is the director, and she started it. It really started with a parade, and it kind of just ballooned into something else where now we offer workshops and educational sessions and things like that. And it's expanding to Pittsburgh and Harrisburg across the state. So it's really exciting to see. And now that we've opened things up for virtual sessions, we can actually have people from all over the world join us, which is very, very cool. I think the first year of the pandemic was when we had the most virtual sessions ever, and it was really successful. Next slide. Let's get more into the sexuality education part. So the Let's Talk About Disabled Sex program is something we do once a year. We had our 5th annual event this Valentine's Day, where we invite really just anyone to come. It could be people with disabilities. It could be allies, professionals who work in the disability population, whoever wants to come. And we have I will host a workshop teaching about sexuality and giving them language to talk about it in a positive way, and just making it fun and not so scary to talk about. I think because a lot of people come to the workshops feeling like, oh, this is a topic I don't know anything about, or like I'm not going to be able to present it right. And I'm like, nope, you got this. You can answer these questions. You can do this. It's just about teaching the skills. And then we're definitely going to do more workshops in the future that are more targeted towards the disability community. And I'm excited to do those. We have had a few in the past that were like 1-hour workshops where we get into a topic really specifically. So it could be like sexual health and reproduction, or pleasure, or adult toys, whatever tools we can give people to experience their own sexuality. That is what's important to me. And we're building a reference page on our website that will really offer a lot of good information for people to just continue learning and continue growing their experience. Yeah, and I really think it's important to teach about pleasure. I think people with disabilities, having fun is empowering. Like, that is just, we're claiming our space, we're meeting our own goals. That's really what's important here with these projects. So we do need some more funding to do this kind of work. We are applying for more grants, applying for more support. But yeah, it's been a really exciting project for the past 5 years, and I think we can grow it even more. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Izzy. Our next speaker is also joining us virtually from Austria. We have with us today Nadine Dlouhy, and she is from Equalizent. And Nadine, if you'd like to join us, we'd be happy to listen.
Hi, sorry, I'm just here to sign what Nadine is saying. Sexual education in the deaf mother tongue sign language. It has been adapted for deaf young people. So with the teamwork that requires sex education experts, deaf native signers, there's also queer deaf people who have been involved, deaf pharmacists, and trained translators in German. This is also to ensure that diversity is well represented. So with SexBef, the content, there's over 65 educational videos. The topics are related to body, reproduction, conception, sexually transmitted diseases, sex and the law, media, gender, as well as other identities. It is available in Austrian Sign Language as well as with German subtitles. For the Sign Language Dictionary, which has over 150 terms related to sexuality, 30 of them are animated with avatars available, and it's also available it's also implemented in all subpages to automatically translate keywords in sign language. So the SexBef website, it's a barrier-free website. It's available in mobile. The information can be accessed independently, and it's also immediately retrievable. This enables self-determined and responsible attitudes towards sexuality for people with disabilities. You can contact Equalizent. They do training consulting, and they're based out of Vienna, and below are their social media handles on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you. Goodbye. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Nadine, for your contribution. Joining us now from South America, specifically from Colombia, is one of our Impact Transfer alumni, Monica Cortes, with ASDOWN Colombia. Monica, thank you for joining us today.
Hello, everybody. My name is Monica Cortes. I'm really happy to share with you this panel with our experience in promoting the rights of persons with disabilities in the project My Sexuality, My Right. In this process, we have reached important achievements such as the Zero Project Award in the election of the project as one of the 10 best experience of impact with Ashoka on the advancement of sexual and reproductive rights of people with intellectual disabilities in 2019. Since 2012, Pro Familia, a clinic that works here in Colombia with sexual and reproductive rights, with the support of the Open Society Foundation and hand in hand with the Colombian Down Syndrome Association, the organization that I direct, the Colombian Autism League, and the Action Program for Equality and Social Inclusion has been working to demand an understanding and approach to sexuality and reproduction of persons with disability here in Colombia. In this process, it was identified that persons with disability are subject to different forms of discrimination in the exercise of their sexual and reproductive rights, such as denial of their sexuality, infantilization, or rejection of their bodies, among other forms of stigmatization of their sexuality, which expose them to various health risks through factors such as the absence of sexual and reproductive health care or the lack of accessible sexual information and education. It has been identified that health sector officials in our country have little knowledge of the specific needs of persons with disabilities. For example, they only consult family members when making decisions, engage in practice such as sterilization without consent, denial of access to contraceptive methods, and lack of information regarding sexual and reproductive health, situation that persons with disabilities suffer on a daily basis. Our main objective in this project was addressing and creating awareness of sexual and reproductive rights of people with intellectual and psychosocial disabilities because we need to change stereotypes about their sexuality, forced sterilization procedures, higher rates of sexual violence, lack of comprehensive sexual education, and barriers to access sexual and reproductive health services. Next slides, I can see the slides. Okay. We divide the stakeholders or beneficiaries of the different project activities into 4 groups. Our main beneficiaries are people with intellectual and psychosocial disabilities directly. Then their families. Also, we have workshop with the 2 groups: health professional and decision makers at the government level, health minister professional, human rights defenders, legal clinics of universities, among others. The project will try to be sustainable by providing technical assistance and by looking for more international cooperation. More work is needed in order to promote the implementation of new regulation and work the materialization of the sexual and reproductive rights and health of people with disabilities. We contribute with the project to empower young leaders. We have in this moment at least 320 leaders from 6 cities of Colombia and participate, all of them, in our workshops. Families are more aware of the sexuality of their sons and daughters with disabilities. Comprehensive and accessible health provision model, and also research and knowledge production. We work also in advocacy. We have in this moment regulation with a new law, make reasonable accommodation mandatory and prohibit forced sterilization and make consent mandatory. So our main purpose has been to contribute with a model that allows us to impact different actors and that can be scaled up to all levels of sexual and reproductive health services in our country. What we can share with you, a comprehensive model that includes the strategies to impact all stakeholders, how share our knowledge and experience, share tools and provide technical assistance to different actors here in Colombia, and of course, if you want, in Latin America. Finally, I would like to share some achievements of the last 2 years in which we have continued with the training process in spite of the pandemic. During the pandemic, we were able to have virtual courses for young people on comprehensive sexuality education, training courses for families in 5 cities in the country, virtual courses for health professionals on aspects related to accessible services for people with disabilities, develop and disseminate resources that are useful for families, such as the booklet called Discovering Sexuality in the Family, strengthen participation in Pro Familias Youth Network to the person with disability. We try to find the inclusion always. We believe that it's very important to promote comprehensive sexuality education as a purpose of different sectors, such as education, health sector, for example. So we also suggest that the importance to work in alliance in this project. We have joined civil society organization, health services like Pro Familia, and the academic spaces in order to advance the initiative and achieve a greater impact. Thank you very much for your attention, and thank you, Zero Project, for the opportunity to continue sharing the work we do from Colombia.
Thank you, Monica. It's great to see you again. Our last panelist today is here with me in the room. So we have a live person as well. Not that the others aren't live. Christo Velkov comes from Special Olympics in Belgium and is going to talk with us on the topic as well.
Thank you very much. aging white male, underrepresented on a panel about sex, the Zero Project must be doing something right. We're talking about making the world a better place for people with disabilities. Now, if we want to make it a better place, the good has to be more, the bad has to be less. So we have to talk about the bad as well. We have to talk about the dark side that exists, you know. And it's not an easy conversation, but if we don't have it, if we don't do something about it, all of us together, the bad's not going to go away by itself. Protection from sexual abuse. Now think about that, you know, rape, sexual violence, that's classified as an act of war. It is that bad. It is that bad. Think about what we all read in the news now. You know, people coming up with stories that happened 15, 20 years ago in their lives. You know, that's a lifetime. You know, think about, you know, how dead they are inside because of sexual abuse. And if we're not talking about this here now, if we're not giving examples, it doesn't mean that they're happening. It means that, you know, we don't yet know how to track it, how to trace it, how to disclose it, how to report it. But we have to start somewhere. We have to start somewhere. Why now? Why talk about that now? There is a bit of momentum right now. We all know that, you know, the Me Too movement, etc. You know, the door is a bit open, more open than it was for inclusion and for those conversations. You know, the weaker have a stronger voice. Ideas have a shelf life. You know, we have a window of opportunity. It's not going to be there forever. You know, something else is going to be on the front pages in a couple of years, and we haven't moved the needle together, and the opportunity is gone. So, you know, consider that a call to action for all of us together. Then again, why now? You know, when we started talking about that, when we opened this Pandora box, we learned a lot. There is a lot of knowledge. There is a lot of expertise that wasn't there 5 years ago. Sexual harassment, sexual abuse 5 years ago, organizations were approaching that from the standpoint of liability. Protect the organization from the people the organization is supposed to serve. Think about that. Protect the organization from the people it is supposed to serve. You know, but that's the case. That's the way it was. That's the way it was in the U.S. Gymnastics, lots of lawyers, you know, Boy Scouts, development organizations, faith-based organizations. That was their primary concern when they looked at sexual harassment, sexual abuse. Hide it, cover it. But there is maturity now on that journey, and it's a journey. There is more maturity. Now organizations are approaching it from a duty perspective, you know, what an organization has to do for the people it serves, for the beneficiaries of the organization. So again, there is a window of opportunity. It's not going to be there forever. But think about that also, you know, if your organization is not ready to approach it from a duty perspective, think about that. Social media. Someone sends a Twitter, somebody puts something on Facebook, unverified, that there was a sexual abuse case at Special Olympics. Special Olympics is at the Zero Project. This is pretty much the last time we're together. You know, it is real. Because in this specific case, we also know that, how you call that, the burden of proof has been reversed in the court of public opinion. You know, I'm not a lawyer, but, you know, in law, basically you're innocent till you're proven guilty. But in this case, you know, somebody says something went wrong, nobody will wait for that to be proven or verified. So think about the very fragile situation that your organizations are unless we all do something together. there is a lot of knowledge that's available for us all now. And there is something else that, we have worked on this case. Think about sports. Think about sports, the power dynamic between the coach and the athlete. The athlete does whatever the coach says. I don't have to give examples from a week ago in China. Think about the power dynamic. Then we approach it from a disability perspective now. People with disabilities, the most fragile. Somebody has some bad ideas, they will go to the people who are most vulnerable, most fragile. Think about people who are displaced, migration. And while we're all watching the news today, geopolitical shift, that's happening. Climate change that leads to more displaced people. Think about somebody with a disability who is a migrant. Some of the most vulnerable people. And it is up to us to find ways to protect them. It is up to our organizations to make the world a better place for them by, controlling the bad stuff. Think about all the conversations about gender, and sexual violence. When you say it's male against female, well, not really, not really. But those conversations have to be put on the table. Otherwise, we will not have them. There is something very interesting that's happening in that space as well. I see it. Usually NGOs, we compete for funding. And if we have an idea, we keep it to ourselves. It gives us competitive advantage. I see something very different, the opposite when it comes to, tools for better safeguarding practices. Everybody is sharing what they learn. Because when we share, we become stronger. If we manage to close the door to the bad guys in my organization, they will not disappear, they will go elsewhere, and later on, when I become a bit more complacent, they'll come back. So we really need to work together on that, basically moving the needle for all of us together, and that will involve, donors, the donor community. That will involve suppliers, the places where you buy computers. Ask them, hey guys, what you doing about that? And we even managed to introduce legislation at the European Parliament to say organizations need to do better on sexual harassment protection. Thank you.
Thank you, Christo. Thank you, everyone, for presenting the general ideas of your programs. And I'd like to pose a question to my panel. And from there, we can begin a conversation. We have some time left. So my first question to my panel is, what are the barriers you are facing in moving your programs forward? Is it secure funding, cultural barriers, awareness of the topic itself, engagement of participants, political factors, or other ableist kinds of factors that come in? And not only what are the barriers, but what kind of success have you had in facing one of those barriers? So I open it to my panel members now. Would someone like to comment?
I would like to comment. It's Izzy. So that's a really big question, and I love it. I remember our first year of doing Let's Talk About Disabled Sex, and I remember bringing it up to Vicky, my supervisor, and she was like, well, it sounds like this program's going to take a village. Like, maybe we should partner up, because I was thinking, like, I'm just going to do it by myself, and we're just going to put this together like in a grassroots way. But we worked with other organizations, basically. We had different like sexual health organizations come in from Philadelphia and talk to our participants. And we figured out that bringing in the community is a part of the education, because if the disability community knows about what services are out there, where they can get help, that is super important. But yeah, I think that was one of the barriers, was just like finding partners to do it with. And then I think we're getting a little more momentum with grants and funding, and applying for funding for this kind of work too. I actually have noticed a lot of more acceptance for this kind of work. So yeah, when I first started, I do feel like there was more resistance, and now it's like organizations request it. They request these workshops, or they're trying to do them on their own, and they might try to like take our information and use it on their own, which I don't totally hate, but I like to be credited for what we do. So that's like another thing that's been happening, is sometimes organizations underestimate how trained a person needs to be in sexuality education to teach it properly. So yeah, that's another interesting barrier I think we've had.
Thanks, Izzy. That was a great point. Training of individuals in sexual education, and also in sexual harassment and reproductive rights, is really important. Would someone else like to address the question?
Yes, Connie. Okay, I consider that in your question you have all the barriers joined, but I select, and the main barrier we face have to do with cultural conceptions and the outlines that we know that exist, that is part of our culture, much more so with people with intellectual disabilities who are still considered eternal children and unable of making decisions about their lives or their bodies. So I consider that during this time we have great advances, because we finished with the sterilization that it was permitted here in Colombia. But of course, we continue working with the change of culture, because this is really a great issue that we have. But as our friend said, we changed during these 8 years, more or less. We have all now more families that the son or daughters start the process to learn about their rights, about their sexual and reproductive rights. So I suppose that we have to continue with this and to join others to help with this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. And Christo, you wanted to add to that as well?
No, not really. Cultural taboos and traditions is what I was going to say. Just because, access to funding, expertise, project partners, that applies to all areas of our work. But here, cultural taboos and traditions apply very strongly.
Okay, great. Marissa, did you want to add to that as well, or Nadine?
Sure, I'll add. Just I agree. The cultural taboos. Actually, it's funny because when we started our program, we knew that the parents were the gateway to speaking to a lot of young adults, and we had a kind of test workshop with our sexologist, Dr. Martha. And I was really nervous because a lot of these parent support groups are faith-based and they're centered around these kind of things. And I was really worried about, because our sexologist, Martha, is great. She's super frank. She's super open. And I saw the slides beforehand, and she was going to talk about everything and end with all kinds of, sex aids and vibrators and sex swings and all these things. And I was really concerned about how the parents were going to take it because I didn't want to scare them off, right? You know what? I was completely wrong. They loved it. They had an open, frank conversation. They wanted more. And actually, so that was maybe my own barrier that I had to get past. and I needed to have more faith in the parents to be open to this subject. And it was great because we were able to get young adults in to talk to us. One of the barriers we faced since then is in the pandemic, Zoom fatigue, right? At first we had quite a lot of signups and everything like that, but people just got sick of, like, once homeschooling started, work from home started, all these things, people don't want to be on a computer all the time, right? So we've had to really rejig the format for next year. Shorter dialogues, different speakers, international speakers, hopefully, just kind of making it fresh and try to make sure that it's much more interactive, because I think everybody's feeling a little bit jaded with long seminars, right? Lecture type seminars, right? So that's just something that we've noticed a drop off in attendance. So we're already having to work on it.
Yeah, Zoom fatigue is real, and we have to address those things. But I think you're starting with some solutions, and that's fantastic. Before I engage in another question, we have some audience members with us in the room. Do any of you have a question that you'd like to ask our panel? Yes, can you turn your microphone on?
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name is Ariane, and I'm from the Pro Victimis Foundation based in Geneva. Thanks a lot for all the different presentations. There's one thing I'm always reflecting when I'm looking into projects. All of us are talking about inclusion, right, all together. What is it that when you develop your projects on this issue on sexuality, you seem to be doing specifically for people with disabilities, rather than trying to train people and structure who are already working on this issue with non-disabled people, for them to be sensitive about the additional dimension that a person with a disability might be facing, and be able to serve and educate and do that, but this way around. Is there reasons why it can't happen? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I'm going to open it to our panel for anyone like to answer that, or we kind of, Izzy, you kind of alluded to partners in your response. I don't know if you want to respond to that.
Yeah, I can respond really quick. Wait, what was I going to say about that? We actually invite people who don't have disabilities to our workshops as well, so that they can learn. We encourage family members to come. Yeah. Also, Nadine has had her hand up.
Nadine, if you want to type in your response, we'll have Sumita read your response for us. Thank you. Would anyone else like to respond? While we're waiting,
Shall I say something?
Yes,
While we're waiting
absolutely.
for Nadine. The future aim of our project was actually to pull in people who were already doing sex education in other disability organizations and special education schools, to make a case for a more holistic, more positive, more all-encompassing sex education that is beyond personal hygiene and just about the biology of everything, right? So that was kind of the second and third year of the program, was to make the case for this works, this increases confidence. Now can you go off and tweak how you do sex ed at your special education schools? Because in Singapore, it's still segregated, right? In terms of special education, it's only slowly moving into more inclusion in mainstream schools. But we're trying to make the case that this is a better way of doing it, not necessarily to replace how people do it, because I know they're going to get a bit funny about us telling them what to do, but it's really to bring everybody in so that everybody can start having more open conversations about sex.
Thank you very much, Marissa.
Connie,
Yes, Monica, please.
okay, Connie. Our since we begin this project, our workshops are held with the network of young people that Pro Familia promotes. We held also national meetings of young people with and without disabilities that belong to this network, the young network in our country. So our purpose with the project was how we have the resource to financial. We try to include a person with disabilities, specifically intellectual disability person and psychosocial, with the Joe network. And I consider that it's a great exercise. We have videos, we have a lot of experience how the others, the Jones person with without disability, um, understand how to support the others and how to explain. So it's a great exercise for us. So we try to do always inclusive exercise.
Thank you, Monica. I think Nadine does not have a comment at this time. We have about 6 minutes left, and I would like some closing comments from our panels of what you'd like to see. If each of you could quickly give a 1-minute response of how you'd like to see the world take the next steps. Maybe Marissa, you
I
could
can
start.
speak to that.
Yeah.
Oh.
Go ahead, Izzy.
I just want to see more sex positivity in the world, and like I want people with disabilities to be growing up with those conversations and continuing on into adulthood. That's what I hope.
Beautiful. Marissa, last thoughts.
I agree with a lot of what I've heard, in the sense that I think it's great to start having more conversations about sex, so that gives people the confidence and the vocabulary to have more positive encounters and relationships, but also have the vocabulary and the confidence to share when things don't go right, and they can share when things go wrong, and hopefully find some recourse and for it to stop. So it goes both ways, right? Language, normalizing conversations, that's how we have both ends of the spectrum dealt with.
Thank you. Christoph, you have a minute.
Thank you, Connie and everyone. Alliances, cooperation, sharing, an ecosystem of practitioners and policymakers. Thank you.
Thank you. And Monica, can we have your last thoughts?
Yes, Connie, we will continue to live installed capacity, specifically in order to make the health, sexual and reproductive rights accessible for all, and trying also to change minds, trying to change the culture about how the persons with disability can decide about their lives, their sexual and reproductive lives. And of course, we need cooperation, as you say. So that's the idea that we have to continue with this project. We have another year to the resource for our cooperants, but we need to continue trying to find another alliance.
Thank you, Monica. Nadine, I would like to give you the last word in our panel today.
I believe I'm just voicing for Nadine. So she's mentioned that they started their sex bath project because there was a huge demand concerning this topic from Austrian youth. But she also believes that this is a little bit late, and she hopes that these conversations can happen much quicker in the future. Nadine, we believe that you need to be typing this. Thank you. Yeah.
We don't have the rest of the text that Nadine put in. Okay, thank you, Nadine. I would just like to say that this is a beginning conversation on sexual health and awareness, reproductive rights, and sexual harassment in regards to people with disabilities. I'm going to suggest that we begin a network and a community of experts in all these areas to share information, techniques, strategies, and funding sources so we can all work together to further sexual health and wellness for people with disabilities. Thank you all to my panelists across the globe who came with us today and took us on a journey. My sincere thanks, and to Christophe, who is in here, well, in person with me. Thank you very much.
Thank you.